Is this it? Okay. Right in the middle. There's two.
Yeah, Walrus was over here last
So
time.
I don't know. Yeah, they like to keep us on our toes. I have to remember how to run a meeting because
Check from the front.
So this is
I'm looking for
559,
some
and that
water.
says 5
I might need to grab some water
Yeah.
now.
Happy New Year.
I'll see.
Good to see you.
Doesn't look.
Jason.
Are these accurate or are
Stephanie.
these accurate?
Good. Alrighty.
Now I'm ready.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Call to order the January 12th. I call to order the January 12th, 2026 meeting of the City of West Sacramento's Transportation, Mobility, and Infrastructure Commission. We will begin with a land acknowledgement. I haven't done this in a while, so I guess I will do it. We would like to acknowledge that land on which we live, work, learn, and commune is the original homelands of the indigenous people of West Sacramento, who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. We acknowledge and we thank the original inhabitants who have occupied, maintained, and secured this place, and who still exist on this land. We respect and we celebrate the many diverse indigenous peoples still connected to this land on which we gather. Thank you. And next, we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. So we would like to invite our guests to join the commission and staff in the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Do we need to take roll call? Is that something you'd like?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay, great.
And I apologize in advance if I mess up anyone's name. Commissioner Cummings,
Here.
Commissioner Banks, Commissioner Kashkuli, Commissioner Rohr,
Here.
Commissioner Zuniga,
Present.
and Commissioner Four,
Present.
Chair Zimmer.
Present.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Next, we're going to move on to General Administration Function Part 1, presentation by the public on matters not on the agenda within the jurisdiction of the commission. Do we have any members of the public here today?
We do not.
We do not. Thank you very much. Then we will move on to the regular agenda, which is the Bicycle, Pedestrian, and Master Plan Workshop. And I believe we have a presentation. I'll hand it over to staff. Thank you.
Well, good evening, Commissioners. I'm Steve Rosen from the Transportation Mobility section of the Community Development Department. And tonight we'll be sharing the progress we've made on the Bicycle, Pedestrian, and Trails Master Plan update. And that is the plan for the city's investment over the next 10 years in bicycling infrastructure, walking infrastructure, and trails. And that'll bring it up to date with what we've done so far since the last update to the plan and get us through 2035. And it'll bring it into conformance with our new general plan mobility element, the mobility action plan, and incorporate the Vision Zero Action Plan, the Sidewalks Transportation and Equity Plan, or STEP, and Safe Routes to School, and their age-friendly community plan. It's going to fold in new developments in electric boosted vehicles like e-bikes and neighborhood electric vehicles, and it will study the changes that in transportation post-quarantine. Don't worry, we're not missing any slides or visual aids for this part of the presentation. So yeah, but the plan will fold in those changes about electric mobility and the way we've changed moving through our city post-quarantine. So we're working on this plan with our friends at Nelson Nygaard Engineering, or NN Engineering, Nelson Nygaard, and Civic Thread. So without any further ado, I would like to hand this presentation over to my colleague, Tracy, who's from Nelson Nygaard, and will be kicking us off. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Great to see you. Thank you very much for having us here today. As Stephen said, we're going to give a presentation to bring you all up to speed on where we are on the Bicycle Pedestrian Trails Master Plan. And I'd love for this to be interactive, so please, I'm going to ask you some questions along the way. And please feel free to interrupt me and ask questions of me and the team at Civic Thread as well. So I'd like to acknowledge them as well while we're getting going, and they're going to jump in just a little bit to do the engagement presentation. But Yara and Mira, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Hi, everyone. My name is Kiara Reed. I'm the Executive Director at Civic Thread.
Everyone, I'm Niru Vidyarthi, and I'm the project manager at Civic Thread.
Great. Let me get going.
Can I just interrupt really quickly?
Mm-hmm.
We don't have the presentations on our screens here at the moment. Thank you. Pardon that.
While we're working on that, I'm personally familiar with Civic Thread as an organization. Any little I don't know if my
And I apologize. Yeah, I'll give you background on Nelson Nygaard. Yeah, I apologize for that. Yes, I'm Tracy McMillan with Nelson Nygaard, or NN Engineering in this case. We're essentially the same firm for like California legal reasons. When we're doing engineering work, we go under the rubric of, or the name of NN Engineering, but otherwise, Nelson Nygaard, we have been a transportation planning consulting firm that was established in the mid-1980s by two women transit planners that worked in San Francisco. So we are a well-established California firm that does work nationally, multimodal work. And we now have 2 offices in Canada, too, as of earlier in 2025. So I think as Stephen mentioned, we have done, we're the prime on this project, but we were also the project manager on the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan, or the Vision Zero Action Plan, which was recently adopted. And Corey, I recall you attended some of the engagement activities for that. And then we also did the Sidewalk Transportation Equity Program plan with the city that was adopted just a couple of years ago as well.
Hi again. Civic Thread has been known formally as Walk Sacramento. We've been around for the past 25 years. We're just over the bridge, but we do work regionally. We've done programs for Safe Routes to School in West Sacramento as early as 2012. Worked very closely with Tracy and her team to lead the engagement for the Sidewalk Transportation and Equity Program, as well as the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan, and obviously working on the Bike, Pedestrian, and Trails Master Plan. A lot of our work has focused on Safe Routes to School, really focused on a lot of advocacy and bike, pedestrian, and trails work in the region.
Great. Are you all seeing your? Oh, no.
I think we can crane our necks for a little while. I think that's okay.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great. All right, well, we will go ahead and get started.
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, I introduced myself. I am the project manager for this project. This is the rest of the NN engineering team. Alex Weber, who's based in LA, is the deputy project manager. We have two primary engineers, Michael Reby and Carly Haithcock. Carly has done a lot of trail work across the country. Mike is a well-established PE in California, has done and was involved with the STEP project and also with the Vision Zero Action Plan project. And then our planners on the project, Sam Mergina, Neha Chinwala, and Annie Chan. And then, as we said, we are joined by our favorite partners, Civic Thread, Kiara, Julia, Niru, and Silali. With the visions, or the West Sacramento Bike Ped Trail Master Plan, the goal is that we are building on the 2018 and 2024 update for the BPT MP, and really taking inspiration from some of the prior plans that have been done by the city. For example, the 2021 Mobility Action Plan, which sets some pretty ambitious goals for mode shift within the city for climate action. The map asked that, or the goal for mode shift in MAP was that 30% of all trips are made by active mode by 2030 and 45% of trips by 2045. The BPT MP, we're all still, I still can't get that out clearly, Stephen. Again, it's building off of the work of that MAP plan, as well as STEP and the Vision Zero Action Plan, and the work that was done with the original BPT MP, with the goals of broadening access to walking, biking, and trails across the city, and really expanding how the community is engaged in the development and implementation and the utilization of that network. An important piece of this plan also, we are looking at what Caltrans or the CTC has outlined as what should be within an active transportation plan within California for those plans to be a jumping off point for projects that are then eligible for active transportation program funding. So in the active transportation program guidelines, these are the components that are outlined that an ATP or an active transportation plan, sorry for the redundancy there, should include. So it should include a description of the mode share that a city has, a description of land uses and key destinations. What are the pedestrian and bicycle facilities that are available within the community, and later that the community identifies as they would like to add to their infrastructure. The analysis or the plan should include an equity analysis and a collision analysis, wayfinding, a discussion of wayfinding within the city, an examination of bicycle parking that's included. It should be a very community engaged. The plan should reflect significant community engagement, and that's really important for projects to be to score well with ATP funding. It should also reflect the level of coordination that occurs in the development of the plan itself and for the implementation of active transportation projects and programs and policies within the jurisdiction. It should include a prioritization process, which we'll talk a little bit about tonight. Not only what are you doing to improve the infrastructure within your community for active transportation, but what type of non-infrastructure investments are you making within your community, such as safe routes to school programs or policies or age-friendly, you have an age-friendly senior plan. Those are the types of components that are also really important to see in an ATP, because it's not just about the infrastructure that's built, but it's about the other support systems that exist to promote physical activity and active transportation. The funding plan to implement projects and programs, how are you going to implement it, as well as maintain it, and then the resolution or commitment of the community and the council and the decision makers in the community to move the plan forward. The BPT-MP update for West Sacramento also includes 2 new additions. These are really to be responsive to the changing environment for, shouldn't say non-motorized transportation, but active transportation and other ways to get about communities without being in a multi-ton single occupancy vehicle. So we're looking at e-mobility devices such as e-bikes. We'll be developing some policy documents and best practices, current legislation review to inform the recommendations we might make to the city on how to approach these vehicles. They're very popular. They're great for really increasing physical activity and movement out, not in a vehicle for people of all ages. But there are a plethora of different types that are out there, some that are falling under current California legislation, some that are operating outside of legislation, and we're trying to get a handle for the city on how to approach that, and as is the state and really communities across the country. Just about an hour ago, Stephen shared with me a new set of legislation from the state. Yeah, do you want to talk about that at all, or not? Yeah, you quite?
So there's a lot of activity going on in this space because there's a lot of people observing these new vehicles and not knowing what's going on. Right now, the state defines e-bikes. There's 3 kinds. They all have 750 watts or less. That's about a half a horsepower. And some of them go 20, some of them go 28. Those are bicycles that have all the rights to our space that regular bicycles do. And the state has recognized that there's a lot of things that are not that on our streets and trails. And in 2026, we have some new laws to control that. The electric dirt bikes you see tearing around, you see teenagers and children tearing around in Rockland and places like that at 55, 60 miles an hour are now need to be registered like dirt bikes with green stickers and all that. So they will be under control. And to help our police agencies deal with that, anything that goes faster than 20 miles an hour that is not an e-bike and is operated on our streets can be impounded. So they now have the authority to do that for when they catch somebody on an off-highway vehicle operating it as though it were a bicycle on one of our trails or on our roads. So there's another law to protect people's homes and offices, protect our buildings. You can't sell an electric bicycle in this state anymore that does not have a underwriter's laboratory or other testing sticker on it. So it'll now be, you'll now know that if you buy one in California, it will be safe to charge in your house or apartment.
Does the city have any, I mean, you're talking about state law and legislation. Does the city have any guidance on any of that at this point?
This plan will include, a product of this plan will be an explainer of all of the laws that affect these that will be put on the city's webpage and in the plan so that people know what the regulations are and what they can expect to do. It's probably not effective to create, or the Cal Bike, it says that it's not effective to create laws city by city because people ride from city to city and won't know what's going on. Just rely on the state to make the overarching rules, which are getting better and addressing problems people have locally.
You mentioned e-bikes that go over 28 miles an hour being registered similar to dirt bikes. And with, I believe the green sticker registration, is that an off-road classification?
I jumped to the conclusion that they'd be getting green stickers, but they're going to be treated the same and need to be registered the same as off-highway vehicle. And the only way that I know that off-highway vehicles are registered for recreation is with green stickers. So I just jumped to that conclusion.
I was just wondering if those e-bikes would be considered street legal, or if the state's, thank you for the update, I could look this up, but if they're being kind of put more towards trail use or street legal use.
If it's a electric motorcycle that isn't isn't able to be registered for the street like an like a motorcycle,
DMV.
like you go to the DMV, get it registered, insure it, and it has headlights and taillights and mirrors and everything,
plate,
like a Bramo or a Zero, then it's an off-highway vehicle.
Interesting. Yeah, just for like non-bicycle trails, but trails. If you could ride a two-stroke dirt bike on it,
Yeah.
then you could ride these e-bikes on it.
Yeah, you can
Great.
take it. You can take it to Prairie City, but not the Clarksburg Branch Line Trail.
They're great for that. Thank you.
Yeah, so more to come on that in terms of providing guidance to the city and on what's happening at the state level and how to coordinate with the state agencies and other local agencies. As Stephen said, certainly the landscape related to these vehicles, both the production of them and what we're seeing come out and how they're being operated and who's operating them is changing rapidly. And so the legislation is kind of in a reactionary mode right now, as opposed to getting ahead of the industry.
So you talked to the e-bikes, but what about the NEVs and the LSVs?
Yeah,
Where's
so that is the other piece. That is a unique
Nationwide.
element for the BPT MP update, is the consideration of the neighborhood electric vehicles and golf carts in terms of how they travel in West Sacramento. Part of that is spurred by the future development for the Yarborough project, in consideration of how people might want to move about within that community, or how you might want to encourage them to move about within that community again, whether it is smaller electric vehicles as opposed to larger single occupancy vehicles. But really the city and other cities that have looked at plans for neighborhood electric vehicles and golf carts are, again, trying to come up with the plan in terms of how and where they should operate, what's the wayfinding associated with these neighborhood electric vehicles, what types of roadways and speeds can they be operating on, and if there's anything off-road that they can be operating on.
So you anticipate that being more of a local,
That would be like a
does the state,
local,
just going
each
with what
one
the
is
state
a-
says, right?
In California is a funny quirk that if you want to have an NEV plan, the state legislature has to give you permission to make the plan. But by putting it in here, we are just identifying where they can go, and we don't know what the product will look like, whether it be an informative map that we can put on our webpage that is not an NEV plan, but just a helpful guide to get to the store in your new NEV. Or it could just be some guidance for whether we want some extra wide bike lanes or something. We don't know yet, but we know that with these large subdivisions that are coming, one of which will be built around a golf course, there will probably be interest in them, and if we can help people use them to get to the store or to take their kids to school instead of their F-350 truck, then we can get some junk out of the air and make our roads a little bit safer.
And those are registered and legal vehicles depending on the characteristics that they have in terms of turning signals, mirrors, seatbelts, and things like that. And it is also a, I guess, vehicle type that has exploded in terms of what's out there and how people are using them, not outside of a golf cart course.
If you ever visit neighborhoods in San Diego, it's like all the traffic are these things.
Yeah. Okay, great. So looking back at the previous BPT MP and the goals that were identified as part of that earlier plan, and I apologize that that's really small. Do you all have that up on your screen yet?
No.
Okay, sorry. So the previous BPT MP looked at, identified the desire to develop a continuous network of low-stress bikeways, had mode shift goals of 5% for bicycles and 10% for walking by 2030. We'll come back to that in a moment. Reduction of collisions, and particularly serious and bicycle and pedestrian collisions, decreased from the 2017 rate. Again, a continuous and interconnected network of bikeways and walkways that are safe and convenient, a system that's well integrated with transit, secure and convenient bike parking. New developments will have bicycle and pedestrian friendly on-site circulation and access, and the city will provide educational opportunities. So those are some of the goals that were identified at the previous BPT MP. And those goals, overlap quite a bit with the, again, more recently developed Vision Zero action plan and the STEP goals for Vision Zero. We also wanted to have a safe transportation system, or a transportation system that prioritizes safety within West Sacramento. We're looking at implementing safe speeds throughout the city, so that the streets were safe for all modes and all people traveling along the city's streets. Encouraging everyone to be safe and responsible users of the transportation system, and to really develop a culture of understanding and support around traffic safety. STEP, similarly, again, focuses on safety and safe routes within the community, with a goal of supporting a healthy and safe environment and community, and with a focus on equitable access. So a lot of overlapping themes and goals across these plans. But as I noted earlier, when we looked at the mobility action plan goals, the mode shift really goal by 2030 was a 30% split, whereas the BPT MP has a 15% mode shift mode split by 2030. And then, of course, the BPT MP has an even greater mode split by 2045. So one question to all of you as we move forward in the development of this BPT MP: how do we reconcile these two different goals that we have for MAP and the past and the current BPT MP? Do you want us to be moving towards that keep that aspirational goal of the MAP? Or do we come to a more measured or attainable goal that's more in line with the past BPT MP?
So actually, I had a question for you on this. Is we're 5 years into it, maybe 4.5. I'm not sure what the month that we started that or made that goal or whatever on either plan, but how's our progress so far? Do we have a sense of that?
We have, what we're going to share with you in a little bit are some data from Replica. That Replica is, we are using essentially our cell phone data to look at trip and movement activity. So looking at that data in terms of daily trips and the estimation of how people are moving about the city, we're about 24% of walking and biking trips within the city, or 24% of trips within the city are walking and biking. So again, and that's looking at Replica data. And it could be something as simple as moving about a shopping center as opposed to walking between your home and a shopping center. But in terms of how people are moving within and across the city, that's what some of that data is showing.
But we don't have data, the same type of data from 5 years ago, do we?
We don't have that.
So we don't
that data. Yeah.
Didn't have a baseline.
The baseline.
To know what the change, the shift has actually been.
Yeah.
I just want to point out how it can be really difficult to travel through these modes when the infrastructure isn't there. I know that we have a plan to completely update Sacramento Avenue, and also there's a plan to complete the that trail system Sycamore Trail.
Mhm.
There are major phases that have not been completed, and of course, Sacramento Avenue, there's been some minor additions like crosswalks, which is great. Don't get me wrong, but it's very, like, safety is really the main concern for a lot of people. I don't feel safe. I have a daughter that, I push her in a stroller. I don't feel safe on Sacramento Avenue. I don't feel safe biking it. I would just say that sometimes, these goals, like the 45%, it seems pretty ambitious if we don't have the infrastructure. I think it's 2029 for Sacramento Avenue, maybe, but maybe Steven or Jason or Stephanie.
For Sacramento Avenue, we do currently have funding for prelim engineering. So we aren't fully funded. We need to make sure we continue to get funding for the next phases. But if the project continues to be funded, we think that we can start construction in like the early 2030s.
Okay, so yeah, early 2030s construction. So, it's kind of, we don't know when it will be completed at this point, it sounds like. And so I think that's a big part of these goals. Like, maybe we should be a little less ambitious and pull back until we have the infrastructure there so people can feel safe moving about the city.
Or like a balanced approach in terms of, it is good that the goal of mode split and, change in mode split is there, along with an acknowledgement of the safety goals that also have to be shifted, and the programmatic elements that have to be as a complement of that mode shift. Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
Could you help us to understand kind of how a higher goal would affect city decision-making versus a lower goal? Yeah.
Well, a higher goal would tell us that we would need to invest more sooner to achieve the goal by that date.
I like the sound of that. It almost sounds like kind of how you would bid on something then is, ask for a little bit more than you think you're going to get. So we might support an ambitious goal. I'm just trying to think, like, if we did a more balanced or a more, a lower realistic goal, how much would that benefit or not, or if it would just make it so that certain milestones were met or not.
I guess I would say that to the degree that we can, we'd want all of our planning to have that same goal, whatever that is. I mean, it's kind of crazy to say this one here and this one here. It's like, kind of get that alignment, but I don't know timing-wise on when plans are done and revised, how that works. And are they truly the exact same goals? Are they both a shift from vehicles to walking and biking, or is there nuances between them? But I would think trying to align them at least would be important.
Yeah.
And I'd lean toward being optimistic and
Aligned and aspirational.
Yeah.
Yeah, aspirational is great. I just want to make sure that if unattainable goals are set, that somehow that doesn't impact negatively the success of how the city views its projects and can, boast or not boast about it in future grant applications, that kind of thing. So I think it would be good to be able to say, hey, we set this goal, we met this goal, instead of potentially never meeting your goals if they're unrealistic.
Whole praying wolf thing.
Yeah, or
Kind of the
promoting.
chicken and the egg thing. And then,
Yeah.
I think the other important component is to make sure you have something that's associated with the goals in terms of what's your accountability to report out on progress towards attainment of that goal. So also there's an acknowledgement if there are actual barriers that come up related to it. Like if you do receive funding, but there's a pandemic and all of a sudden construction costs go up and the project that you bid out be X amount is now X times 3 amount, and that may delay the construction of that project. So
Would having these goals help encourage some projects to get done faster? Like if we had a more ambitious goal, would that lead to, more prioritization of projects?
I think that's partly a question for the city. I think overall, it is important to have a goal. Again, going back to when you are seeking funding, say from a source like the active transportation program, that's important documentation in terms of showing the city's commitment towards active transportation and how the city wants to, not only active transportation, but the other associated goals of the active transportation program in terms of greenhouse gas reduction and improvements in safety and equity. Yara?
Yeah, and I think from an advocacy perspective, when the city sets priorities and the community hears those priorities, it's a good point of accountability from the community's perspective to come back and say, these are the priorities you set, and we want to see you investing in those priorities. And for the community to say, be able to come back and say, what is the progress you've made on these priorities? How far have you gotten on these goals? What are you doing to meet those goals? So when you have these aspirational goals, the community, you're accountable to the community to reach those goals.
I would think also that, we're having that discussion right now. As we get farther along in this whole process, we look at existing conditions, and then we assess where the gaps are, and where do we want to add things, and because it changed since 2018, these are more areas that we want to focus on versus over here. Once we get kind of that plan of projects and things, then the people who deal with these plans and understand city funding and all the other competing activities look at those and say, all right, we could probably get this far down the road on these in the next 10 years. What does that, from an expert standpoint, what do you think that will do as far as making that shift? And so it's kind of based on the plan that we come up with, but we don't really make that goal until, and then,
Right,
Does
it's
that
not
make
a goal just out of thin air, like, oh my gosh,
and not
let's say
having the resources
50.
to do
Let's
it,
just say 50.
I mean, it worked for Kennedy. We're going to go to the moon, but
Yeah, right. I
he
mean,
wasn't sure where
there's
we
that.
were in the Apollo program kind of thing.
Yeah, there's that too. But if we know that we're going to complete the Sycamore Trail by X amount of time, just even putting in the non-motorized bridge, is a significant,
Assessing those.
Gap. Not only that was such a significant gap fill because of the barrier that it surmounted. But there was, an estimation of what the impact of that project would be in terms of utilization and, what potential impact it could have on the modes of just daily rides. So
There's so many things that will impact that shift too. I mean, I'll just give you my example. It's like I walk and bike a hell of a lot more than I used to 4 or 5 years ago. Was it because there was infrastructure in place? No, because I was like 70 pounds overweight and my A1C was bad. And so I changed my personal perspective, so I made the shift, but it wasn't because something you put in the plan here. Now I want to see more in the plan, because it makes that much more fun, but that's not what drove me. It wasn't a transportation related issue. It was a health related issue.
Right.
So there's so many things that can, make you focus on that shift.
And that is, I was going to say, and that is the important part of, again, that comprehensive approach within an active transportation plan to include, say, non-infrastructure components that we speak to the age-friendly plan, we speak to safe routes to school, we speak to these other aspects of people's lives so that there is programming that can support, if someone has health goals and that there is a program associated with it that the city is implementing, and then hopefully also there's infrastructure in place that can promote it. I come from a public health background, and I always say my origin story is encouraging people across the state of South Carolina to go out and be physically active because it's good for their health. And then I would leave a meeting and go see the goat trail along the roadway that had no sidewalk where they were walking. And I'm like, I'm such a hypocrite because I'm telling them to go out and walk, and they're risking their lives to go out and walk along this 2-lane, 50-mile-an-hour road. So again, we have to put those together to create support.
And to put this plan making in a different perspective, I don't know what the numbers would be, but when you said a number, we had realistic or aspirational here, you're thinking about, you're the Transportation, Mobility, and Infrastructure Committee, so how much what priority should walking and biking be for the city? If it should be our number one transportation priority, set it super high. If it's one of many, set it more evenly with the others, set a more reasonable number, because then the city council will be hearing what you say as the voice of the people and their advisors about this kind of issue. And if they hear you say that you want active transportation to be the number one way people get around, then they'll have to weigh that against what they think, and also all the other people who are coming, all the other departments who are coming to them to ask for money. And then when they adopt the plan, they're sending the message to the city staff of what priority this kind of transportation should be for city staff when we're trying to figure out what to do to serve the people of West Sacramento, so that later on over the next 10 years, when Jason McCoy is in the management meeting, he can say, our goal is this, the city council set the goal as this, so therefore, when we're competing for project funding when these projects are competing for funding with other stuff, we can point at the number and say, remember when you thought this was the most important thing in the city, and remind them of that as the goal, and then they'll have to remember what they said. Mm-hmm. So it's about setting priorities overall and accountability, and advising them on what you think the policy should be.
So, are we needing to give a kind of a recommendation as a vote for this portion of the presentation?
If you'd like.
I mean, I don't know if I'm happy to kind of talk a little bit more if we want to get more info before calling a vote. I would just say before that comes up, I'm definitely biased in kind of getting much more for pedestrian and active transportation. However, seeing how people speak in this city, potholes and road conditions for cars is a very big topic of conversation, and something moving and putting stuff into things like that, I think would go a long way towards kind of that trust building in the meantime before these big infrastructure projects kind of come up. So I think I would personally recommend a balanced approach, and I think I would also just motion for a vote.
Before I do that, just again, because of the conversation we had about maybe kind of figuring out what that, if we can talk about the type it is, but versus an actual number. I don't think we want to talk about an actual number until we get farther down the road. Yeah.
Well, sorry, did you say earlier it was 20-something% that we're at currently?
25.
Yeah, I can jump if, do you want to pause on the vote?
I will cancel the motion until we discuss more.
Yeah, I'm also struggling to understand 25%, and I'm thinking it must be also fitness and recreation. Yeah, that seems high.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, one of the other things that we've talked about with the BPTMP is remembering that it's not just about transportation. We are interested in supporting recreation and people's movement about the city. So, yes, if people have again, since that is cell phone data and I can move forward to that data, it is people's movement. And whatever it doesn't, we have data on some of the trip purpose based on where they've traveled, but for the purpose of the BPTMP, we want to create a system, an infrastructure system that supports movement by not traveling within a vehicle, whether it's a recreation trip, school trip, a work trip, shopping.
Is that data based on speed of movement?
Part of it, yeah. Okay.
I'm totally intrigued about how you're doing this, actually. Sorry, that's a side
I
note.
saw this in the end of Batman.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, how are they? So you're getting cell phone data and then from lots and lots of people and looking at They're moving from this point to that point at whatever speed and, yeah, wow, okay.
Yeah, Replica is a Google company.
Wow, okay.
So it is a database that a lot of consultants use now in terms of travel activity data. It's aggregated. It is some forecasting. So it is anonymized. It's not like I know, Valerie, where you moved yesterday or the day before. So it's all an aggregation of movement. And what we're looking at is one particular day. This is in terms of who lives in West Sacramento, and this is census data. This is not replica data. The city population is about 54,000 based back in 2023, so it's a couple of years old, this data. You do have a large youth population within the city, so I think that's really interesting. Slightly smaller, older adult population than we see in some other communities, but really an interesting diversity of people within the city of West Sacramento. So yes, the travel pattern data from Replica. So it is an activity-based travel model that simulates where residents, visitors, and commercial vehicle travel happens in an area on a typical day. So what we looked at was a weekday in the spring of 2025. Replica data is grounded in multiple private and public source data, including data from personal mobile devices, demographic data from public and private sources, and credit transaction data from consumer spending. The trip data is aggregated. We've looked at it at a 10th mile hexagon unit to precisely locate trip origins and destinations. And that is one of the interesting pieces with the Replica data, that because you are looking at movement based on the devices that we all now, almost all of us carry within our pockets, our phones, my smartwatch, we're trackable. And the speed at which we move, because we're carrying accelerometers, is also trackable. So looking at the trip database as a whole, so this is all trips, all movements, all estimated modes. On this particular day in the spring of 2025, a weekday, there were 128,000 trips, with people traveling back to their home as the most common trip purpose, followed by shopping and dining. On the diagram on the map, and this is in the existing conditions report, which I think is in your staff report, the circles represent internal trips, so movement within that space based on the trip, and the size of the circle is the number of trips. And then the lines are trips with traveling between different spaces within the hexagon. So we see a large number of trips within commercial areas within the city, and then between home and commercial areas as well. And what we'll move forward a couple of slides. I think the trip pattern and the travel pattern is really interesting in terms of seeing where people are traveling to and from. And then a couple slides from now, we'll look at short trip behavior, which again gets to that idea of mode split.
Does this include people coming in and out of the city?
We just looked, for the purpose of this slide, we've just looked at people moving within West
city.
Sacramento.
Okay.
Yep.
I just thought it'd be interesting to put those 10th mile hexagons across the side of the river, maybe one way to G 15, because you're using that to fill gaps on where people are going, not looking at that back across the river.
Mm-hmm.
Interested at least. Look, I think that would be an interesting study to see how trip.
Yeah, well, we can do that. We'll make sure that the spring day was not post the start of baseball season.
Yeah, was this, it must be a nice day. Was this a nice day?
Oh, yeah.
And then one other thought on those. Just here. Actually, daily trip, weekday was on demand was a trip. Had their present activity, 590 day or so. So there's a disconnect identifying on-demand trips, not just, which actually more on-demand. I don't know how.
Yeah, and I'll have to go back and ask our analyst to define the on-demand.
Oh, right. Yeah, because rideshare appears as car traffic, but is not necessarily the use of a single family vehicle. Yeah.
More so,
It is public
seemed like
transit.
It was skewed compared to the data we're seeing from VIA specific.
Well, and yeah, I mean, I
We're
would,
gonna get it.
I mean, I would say that VIA probably has the better number since the replica is an estimation or a simulation of that. So I would trust the numbers from VIA.
Same with the public. You know, they're still looking at ride count city and ride.
And that might be, I mean, again, with the YOLO, that's tied to a bus stop location. So again, looking at if there is a discrepancy between those numbers, that would be probably easier to decipher than beyond.
Can I interrupt for a second and just note, I don't think that we really have great alighting and boarding data from Yellow TD because they've been working on installing counters at so that they can actually track the boarding and lighting data by stop. Unfortunately, they've run into multiple issues with the technology and installing it and everything, and I think they are still currently underway with that. So
I knew we were working. I just don't, because we had that discussion at the last
Yes.
meeting about how much is going in shares between VIA versus them, and
Yeah.
hoping to get more information.
That's like, is that like the problem when like your Connect card doesn't actually process? Because that happened to me this morning.
oh, I'm not
It's
sure.
like, I'm like, I guess they can't count me.
I have a comment about this slide.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I understand the data a little bit more, I know you asked for a goals discussion, but I can't help but notice the triangle on the upper left-hand side of that map. That is the IKEA, Walmart, Home Depot triangle. And I just want to note that I don't think there are any, my understanding of the Sacramento Avenue bike plan is that it stops at Harbor. It doesn't actually go to that triangle. And that getting there is actually kind of hazardous, right? Getting across Harbor Boulevard and riding along that road that goes between Harbor and Harbor and the interstate there, I-80, is not a friendly bike trip. I've done it.
You're wondering whether the lines between those locations are actual walk and bike trips?
No,
as opposed, oh.
No, I believe that they are walk and bike trips because that's a shopping center, and I think that
Mhm.
there are lots of low-income folks that maybe took the bus there and did walk around. And I think that maybe even people who drive are walking around. I think the people who have cars or maybe are driving between Walmart and Petco or whatever, but they might not be. I do think that that is a hotspot for people to walk around because there are many shops and also to work. And I would extend that beyond Reed Avenue. I would extend it on the other side of the freeway. I don't see any data over there. But that is there's a bunch of commercial centers, and people that work there aren't going to be biking over there because it's not safe to get there in the first place. And I do think that some of those folks might bike there if it were. And I do know that 80 is a bit of a barrier, right? There's an underpass there, but all of the access routes to and from 80 are on the south side of the highway. The north side of the highway doesn't have any, on Interstate 80 doesn't have any on-ramps coming on or off. So I think there is some opportunity to even push it beyond there a little bit. Now there's not a lot of traffic beyond there, so once you get past 80, maybe it's not a big deal, but I would say in terms of priorities, if that's what the data are showing, that maybe we should be looking at including a connection between Sacramento Avenue and that triangle.
I think it's also really interesting to look at it, the data on the next slide.
Mm-hmm.
And does anyone want to say anything more about this one, or should I advance to the next? Okay. So this is short range trips. So this is all vehicle trips that were 2 miles or less, where someone is either a driver or a passenger. And we're interested in looking at this because it is a trip length that seems primed for mode shift. Can we shift a 2 mile vehicle trip to a 2 mile bicycle trip? Maybe not a walking trip. That's a little bit farther to walk, but these are 2 mile or less. So maybe it's a half-mile trip that we can shift to a walking trip. So again, going back to that corner, that area that you were looking at, we do see it is one of the hotspots again in terms of people that are taking short trips to that area, as well as many of the other shopping centers within the city, and traveling from the neighborhoods to the commercial shopping centers, which isn't surprising. But again, just providing a data point to support a particular action to say, okay, we want to focus on short trips and what can we do to improve the conditions for these shorter trips to make a trip to the grocery store, to Target, to my kid's school, more viable by these modes and more pleasant as well.
Oh, and I know those centers that we see up there are pretty plainly a lot of the city schools. I mean, I see River City High right there. I see, Bridgeway Lakes and Southport Elementary, and then the elementaries at the top and Bright and Westfield. And so, safe routes for schools in the conversation here. That's a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
I'm actually personally doing safe routes for school work with some of Civic Threads resources. And the infrastructure is a big part of it.
Yep.
And the traffic calming for those safe routes to school is a huge one that makes people stay in their cars. And also, school communities are probably the most ripe for mode shift out of all demographics. So I would highly recommend laying hard on safe routes to school for this particular set of data.
And Civic Thread can speak to this. One of the challenges with safe routes to school is also maintaining it beyond the elementary school population as we move to the middle school and the high school population.
Did you say that this was a mix of driving and walking and biking, this short trips, or is this just walking and biking?
No, this is vehicle trips that are
this
2
is
miles or
vehicle
less.
trips.
Yeah. So this data on in particular focuses on vehicle trips again to highlight here's our opportunity. Can we shift these even a small percent of these if we could shift them to walking or bicycling? Because again, like each of these circles, the smallest circle is 100 to 150 trips. So we see that, circle up in the Bright Broderick area, it's about 150 to about 300, trips in that one day is represented within that circle.
It looks like Elkhorn. I know it's closed right now, the elementary school, that circle up there in the I don't know, I have to look at the map, figure out what's drawing people right there, but yeah, like Commissioner Rohr said, school's definitely a big driver and also a big hassle for parents to have to drop off their kids in a car. Yeah, the traffic. So if it's easier to bike them, if they're too far to walk, that would be a great opportunity for sure.
So in the existing conditions report, and thanks to Stephen and Stephanie for helping us there's been a lot of bicycle facility work in the city over the past few years. So we've all been working together to make sure this map is up to date. And I think it's even missing one that we found here later today. But the city has been making a lot of progress on the network of bikeways and bike facilities within the community, particularly those that are class 4 protected bike lanes, seeing more and more every day. There are a couple of upcoming projects. The Sycamore Trail extension, it will go into the phase 3, will begin construction. And then the West Capitol bike facility upgrades continue. And then for pedestrian facilities, as I mentioned, Nelson Agard and Civic Thread assisted the city with the STEP project, which did a full inventory of the sidewalks within the city. Through that inventory, we identified that 61% of all street segments in the city of West Sacramento have continuous sidewalk on both sides of the streets. But there were several projects that were identified through STEP, and that the city has been successful at receiving at least partial funding for several of those. And so we will see some progress and construction in relation to some of those projects in the near, not too distant future. Okay, well, I'm going to pass it on to Civic Thread, who can give you an update on what we've been doing thus far for engagement for this project, and then we'll talk about what.
All right. Let me make sure I know how to use this clicker. Okay, I do. All right. So to kick off engagement, and really for any engagement effort we're leading, we start with a robust community engagement plan. And we do that in partnership with our partners at NN Engineering, the city, and in this case, our partners at the Health Education Council, who really worked as cultural brokers. And this engagement plan really served as the building blocks to guide all of our efforts for phase 1 and as we move into phase 2. And it also helped us build off of lessons learned that we had taken away from previous efforts, including the STEP project, the Vision Zero Action Plan, and even some of our previous Safe Routes to School efforts. So the plan introduced some of those lessons learned, which really helped us focus on better outreach to our Spanish and Russian speaking community members, which is how we brought in Health Education Council, in addition to new strategies to help us reach recreationalists like equestrian users, and also balance people who rely on active transportation alongside recreationalists to make sure that we're having a comprehensive approach to our community engagement. Through our engagement efforts, and really with the plan as our guiding framework, we held a number of events. We reached a number of residents with the utility mailer, really encouraging folks to participate in the survey. All of our materials were available in Spanish and in Russian, and we were able to reach folks at a Sloppy Moose Run Club pop-up at Bike Dog Brewing, really to make sure that we were reaching runners who had just got off of the trail. We also reached families and small children at a Trick or Trails pop-up at River City High School. And as you'll hear, we really leaned into where our strengths lie, which is with families and youth, really leaning into our long history doing Safe Routes to School work. We also leaned into coffee with parents at River City High School, chatting with parents in small group interviews. We also did Students on the Go, so hearing directly from high school students on what they wanted to see for the West Sac Bike Ped Trail Master Plan. And then we heard from older adults at the West Sac Community Center, at the Senior Lounge. And then lastly, we partnered again with the Health Education Council. They do a Walking with Friends engagement effort at Elkhorn Village Park, where they partner with parents who are both Spanish and Russian-speaking community members, and so they kind of did a two-day pop-up in one, where they were able to reach both groups in one day. And shout out to my team who did all of those events. I did not do any of those, so credit goes out to them. And again, just really leaning into the youth focus. We know West Sacramento has a high population of youth, so really wanted to drill down into making sure we were reaching that demographic in phase one. Okay. So in summary, phase one really was about listening and making sure we understood the existing conditions. And rather than asking people to come to us and throwing additional events that brought people out, we met people where they were in their everyday locations at events they were already attending. And it was really designed to fit into people's everyday lives, which really allowed us to meet people where they were. And with the example of Sloppy Moose, we met people right as they were coming off the trail, right? So that feedback that they were giving us, they were just experiencing it right then and there. So it allowed for really honest feedback right there in the moment, really capturing their lived experience. We also had the opportunity to really center language justice. We have a design with equity approach, and I think what we've learned in previous experiences is that a lot of the communities that we are trying to reach, they have this distrust a lot of times with government, and so while they may want to be engaged in some of these processes, sometimes when they hear that it's a city-run thing, they maybe don't want to participate. And so partnering with Health Education Council was a really big plus for us. They are already meeting with these families on a regular occurring basis. And so it wasn't Civic Thread coming out and hosting a pop-up. It was meeting with folks that they already meet with. Right? It was training health education up on how to present on these materials, how to use the maps, and then they're just doing their regular meeting space and using the materials to engage with the folks they already engage with. And while we offer the materials with translations, they have folks on staff who speak the language, and so a lot of times we don't need the translated materials, or we don't need folks to engage. We don't need the interpreters, right? They have the folks there to communicate with the folks that we need to communicate with. And so it really allows us to meet people in the languages that they speak. It allows us to not put them on the back burner where they're being translated to instead of being able to speak first and engage authentically. And that really brings us from how we focused our engagement. And I'm going to pass it to Neeru, who's going to talk about what we heard from the community and some of the key takeaways from phase one of engagement.
Thank you, Kiara. So, sorry about that. So we, like Kiara mentioned, we really we had a sort of array of activities and really brought up maps and grounded folks with all of the spatial data and had them do activities on the map. And what I want to focus on today is mostly the high-level takeaways from what we heard. And we have a detailed engagement summary report that we can share with you, including all of the maps and the comments that we got on detailed routes, intersections, and barriers that folks face. And so when we consolidated feedback from all of the in-person and online engagement efforts, what we heard is that folks love using the trails and they do want to see some extensions and connections in the trail network. But where the network really struggles is at the handoffs. So the friction is not necessarily on the trail itself, but it shows up when someone has to really go from their neighborhood street to the trail or to a commercial area or a major crossing. And this is also not just about recreation, but also about daily life. So like Tracy mentioned, much of the short-range trips are to schools, grocery stores like the Nugget, and the town centers. So the improvements that people really want to see is tied to their daily errands, the school access, and not just recreation. And so connectivity to these key destinations becomes a priority. And if we can safely connect neighborhoods to schools and commercial centers, we can really unlock those short range trips that can shift from driving to walking and biking. And so I'm just going to pause here to just give a sense of all the key destinations. So for the young people, it's definitely the schools, and we have the commercial destinations. In terms of transit, people did want to see more coverage to Industrial Boulevard, and also more coverage along the Route 37. The trails, they currently really enjoy and use the trails, especially bikers and runners. And the neighborhood and local routes are more used by the senior folk, and they love walking within the neighborhoods, and really stressed on wanting comfort within the neighborhood sidewalk network. And also when it came to crossing across the bridge, Tower Bridge came up a lot, and connections to Sacramento was also something that came up during conversations. And so looking at feedback from the community, we see that the focus is sort of twofold. We see that on the major corridors, it came down to talking about speed and traffic and really feeling safe, like you mentioned, Sarah. And in the neighborhood streets, it was about the smaller things like this comfort, like lighting and sidewalk, like curb cuts, and having sidewalks that are accessible to mobility devices. And the major corridors in this slide that you can see is that people really flagged West Capitol Avenue, Jefferson Boulevard came up a lot, South River Road, Industrial Boulevard, and 15th Street area. And so the barriers that we heard are speeding and stressful crossings, and all of the heavy traffic. And so the ask was pretty consistent. Folks wanted to see more crossings on West Capitol, more sidewalks on Jefferson, and really protected bike infrastructure on these major corridors, especially South River Road, and safer access to the trails themselves. And so on the neighborhood streets and local routes, especially in Brighton, Broderick, and the Lake Washington Boulevard area, around Sacramento Avenue and Elkhorn Park, the recurring barrier is lighting. And so feeling unsafe after dark or while waiting for the bus. And so residents really called out specific streets like Kegel Drive, Cummings Way, and parts around the Elkhorn Park and Sycamore Trail. So like I mentioned, people really enjoy using the trails, but the weak links are the connectors and getting from the neighborhoods to the trails or crossing these major corridors safely. And so phase 2 is really about prioritizing those connectors where those small changes can really unlock more walking and biking trips. And this was just a word cloud that came up when we put up all of the survey and like the in-person engagement data and comments. So as you can see, some of the key destinations that really pop out are Jefferson Boulevard and River City High School, Capital City Freeway, and Nugget Market. And we got all this feedback during the phase 1 engagement, and we really corroborated that with previous engagement efforts, things that we'd heard from Safe Routes to School program, from the STEP program, from the phase 1 of Vision Zero, as well as Sacramento Avenue Complete Streets Plan. And this really, again, summarizes some of the things that repeatedly came across, and consistent sort of long-standing barriers that people face. And so Sacramento Avenue really continues to stand out for sidewalk gaps, faded crosswalks, fast traffic, and collision hotspots. And so the need here was really more protected infrastructure, especially bike infrastructure. And Capitol Avenue and the Glide area also come up for high speeds, difficult crossings. Jefferson Boulevard is something that consistently raised in most of the engagement events. And so the things that people want to see here is traffic calming, better lighting, and safer crossings. And so the neighborhood streets, folks really want to see better sidewalks and speed breaks, connecting the neighborhoods to the major corridors. And the big takeaway here is that we see the same corridors and areas show up across the plans, which tells us there is strong alignment on where investment is most needed and where improvements will likely have that broad community support. And so this is a continued list of what we sort of gathered from previous engagement efforts. And some of the things that come up on this slide are Marshall Road and Southport Parkway crossing area, which was flagged because people are crossing where there are no marked crossings, and also Jefferson Boulevard and Marshall Road intersection comes up because of the signal issues, and also we see that on residential streets, like I mentioned, people raised everyday barriers like overgrown landscape, blocking the sidewalks, or narrow or very uneven sidewalks, and speeding. And the clear requests here are, rather than new projects, they want to see maintenance of the existing infrastructure. And so, and especially near the trails, they want to see better lighting, that especially around the Westfields Village School area. They asked for more shade and better protected or better marked bike lanes, and curb ramp and sidewalk repairs. And so with that, I think that just brings us to the end of the in-person engagement and like the key takeaways from that. And we're kind of diving into the territory of the surveys. And so here we see that most of these alternative modes of transportation, we see about like folks, 73% of folks walking or biking, and about 74% of folks already using personal or shared bikes. So this really tells us that there's already a lot of like folks using alternative modes of transportation, and this lays a very good foundation for adoption and that mode shift goals that we are aiming for under BPTMP. And again, some numbers that stood out here is folks that use mobility devices like a wheelchair. So about more than half of the respondents use mobility devices, and we see that this came up in our conversations with seniors a lot, where they really wanted to, when we asked them, oh, do you walk? They say no, but like on further questioning, the reason is because they either use a walker or a wheelchair. and the infrastructure doesn't really support that. They're even short, like neighborhood walks sometimes. And when we also look at the purposes, and this kind of ties into what we see in the data as well, it's not just the sort of trips to schools and shopping, but it's also like the smaller trips that, you know, you want to walk your dog, you do it because it's better for the environment, it's good for your health, or it's you're a senior citizen and you can't really drive the car anymore. So those things came up a lot during the survey responses. And so we see that folks really want to use like active transportation modes, and there is a high receptivity for that in the city. And so we also see that trails trails are really popular, and people love walking, using all of the existing infrastructure, and so want to see these networks sort of build and get connected more. Especially the runners, they were really enthusiastic about providing their feedback, and they want to see a lot of them already run on like across different trails, and they would love to see them connected. And they also, some of them run with their kids on strollers, and that's where they feel like there's a lot of barrier in terms of how the neighborhoods connect to the trails. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Tracy to walk us through the next steps for phase 2.
This a little bit too. Okay, so thank you. And in terms of the survey, we just closed the survey in late December, so we are just starting to get into kind of the deeper analysis of that, but we were pretty happy with the survey response. We kept it open for a little bit longer than we had originally intended, but we wanted to take advantage of some holiday events that were happening in the promotion, utilizing the utility mailer as a mechanism to promote the survey. I look over at Stephanie because she helped us a lot in getting that organized, implemented.
Got a question about that. I mean, I think it was 370 something, or what the number of responses. On one hand, when you look at a city this large, that seems very small, but what's your experience of those kinds of things? I know people just don't engage a lot on these kinds of things. That's why you gotta go to them, but.
Yeah, I think, I mean, kind of triangulating or, using multiple methods to get engagement is really the best. Like you said, it's getting people to engage in surveys, whether online or they're filling it out in person or print. I mean, Kiara and her team probably have better anecdotes related to this, but I think it's becoming an increasing challenge because people are just busy, and you have to design the survey in just the right way to get them to continue to start it and finish it.
Yeah, actually, like what Tracy mentioned, folks start the survey, but sometimes they don't submit it. But we also, so we had like a multi-pronged approach in reaching out to folks. So we shared the survey in in-person events. We also had had the sort of QR code shared in utility mailers. We also had online outreach on social media and through our partners. And so considering previous engagement efforts, Tracy, would you say like this is like sort of closely matched to those numbers that we've seen like for STEP or VZAP? And
I think generally speaking, survey turnout is low. Just generally speaking, I think community members are pretty burned out for surveys. In fact, a lot of times when you do a survey, what you hear from community is, why is there another survey? So there's also the idea that folks who are going to complete the survey are always the folks who are going to complete the survey, which is why you have a multi-pronged approach, because there are folks who are just not going to do a survey. And that's why you go to meet those folks where they are in community.
Okay.
And as Neeru mentioned, in one thing that we haven't yet looked at, but we did use different QR codes depending on how we were promoting it. So we had a QR code that was specific for the utility mailer, so we can go back and track how many people answered the survey
more
via the
effective.
utility mailer versus
Oh.
another mechanism. So
I think you actually put that on the slide. If you go back a few slides
I
to
think it's
number
yeah.
18.
So that was actually quite a good response rate via the utility mailer. And the utility mailer, I don't think in the end we did a QR code that was specific to the physical mailer versus the digital. We did?
No,
Oh, yeah, okay.
So we did
You can make a QR code for any.
we did a special SurveyMonkey link that went into the utility mailer. Yeah, and then so that was sent out in English, Spanish, and Russian and went out to all of the residents. And so that was the result. Yeah.
So we were trying to get some of that specificity in terms of the different promotion methods for the survey, so we could look at, if one was more successful than the other in terms of response rate. So I think this provides a nice, plug for the utility mailer. Okay, so moving on to phase 2. You have, as I mentioned, within the staff report, you have the full existing conditions report to, peruse at your leisure. It's good bedtime reading. We'll also provide the phase 1 summary engagement if that's not yet in the staff report. Stephen, I can't remember if you were going to include that or not. Okay, well, we will. But that all lays the groundwork for phase 2, which is the analysis and recommendations phase. We talked a lot about identifying the gaps and the opportunities. I love that word that Neeru uses in terms of where are the points of friction and where are the disconnects within the community that people have identified they really want us to fill. Some of them are consistent with what we've seen in other plans, and that's part of what we'll continue to document. And again, being able to help support what's already been documented and planned for and recommended in previous planning efforts, having, yet another plan say, really, this is what we see is important, can help to push those projects forward. As well as identifying, like we've been talking about today, what are the other, not just the physical infrastructure projects, but what are the other strategies and actions that can be taken by the community and the city and supporting partners to help complement the physical infrastructure that's being put on the transportation system within the city to encourage people to get out and walk and bike, whether it's for going to school, going for walking their dog, walking with their friends, or taking a trip to the store. That's what will start beginning that process of identifying those various activities and projects going into this next phase of work. The plan will continue to focus on areas and communities that have experienced historic disinvestment. We want to support active transportation, travel, and recreation to not only the existing communities and residential areas that exist within the city, but also with an eye towards what does the future hold for the city and what's the infrastructure we need to put in place so that when those developments go in, there isn't an immediate point of friction when it connects to the existing infrastructure. Let's be proactive and help the city be proactive and look at putting in frictionless infrastructure to those locations. And then we want to continue to support the goals that the city has and the programs that you've been active in in the past, whether it's Safe School or the age-friendly West Sacramento. Here again, what we'll be looking at are the previous bike ped trail master plan goals. What we want to do is, in thinking about those goals, is, and whether they are the appropriate goals for this update, and thinking about making them measurable and attainable. This is also important as we think about, on the next slide, how those goals relate to the prioritization process. So when we did the Vision Zero plan and we did the STEP plan, we really tied the goals of those plans to measurable, in most cases, measurable metrics or variables that allowed us to kind of score and prioritize projects. And that's what we would recommend for this process as well, so that we have a data-driven and objective assessment for looking at, in a sense, sort of how projects stack up against one another, and being able to then also provide that as, if people ask questions, we say these are the goals and this is how we measured this goal. If we're talking about, change in mode shift, then, are we looking at a variable that looks at the percent of short range trips that could be impacted by a particular project within the city? So again, having some measurable association and variables that are tied to the goals as a way to help us to identify priority projects. So we're just beginning to move into this stage of the project. So we'd like to, we'll plan to come back to you maybe at your next meeting for your input on that process, or maybe if we need to be moving along in our timeline, maybe we'll ask Stephen to have a special meeting where we can present to you so we get your input on this process. And that's for physical infrastructure projects. When we're talking about prioritizing strategies and actions, we'll use something similar to what we did. We anticipate using something similar to what we did with the Vision Zero action plan. And again, Corey, you were at this meeting where we were, this public workshop where we were doing this exercise, where we're using an activity like Dotmocracy. We have strategies and actions that are identified, and we're asking the community members to note their level of support for a particular strategy or action, like continued investment in the Safe Routes to School program. Again, just giving you an idea of where we are in timeline. We're moving into this phase of the analysis, task 2, and that really, it takes up a significant amount of the calendar over the next several months. And we will be also associated with it having a second phase of outreach. So that's what Kiara's or Neera's going to.
Yeah, so one of the key goals for phase 2 is really to work alongside the groups that we met with during phase 1. And we're going to be kind of working in parallel. So we want to circle back to the folks that we met with in phase 1 while also trying to fill some of the gaps that we missed during the first time around. And so that means trying to get better outreach to our equestrian users. That's a group that we really wanted to highlight, but that we weren't quite able to capture. And it could just be that it wasn't quite the season maybe for equestrian riders to be out and about, and maybe spring will allow for better access to that group. But also we really want to focus on our cyclists. So Pearson, I know you have some good connections to some cyclists in the area. And I know your dad's an avid e-bike rider. So, and that's a group we definitely want to hear from. So we want to definitely circle back, but then fill in some of those gaps while continuing to bring folks who rely on active transportation and who are generally left out of planning processes, and continuing to bring those folks to the table. And we want to work alongside the community to make sure that what we heard from phase 1 is showing up in phase 2, and that the priorities are being seen in the outcomes that we end up with. And so we want to make those decisions transparently alongside and co-create those with community. Also, we want to make sure that we're integrating with the city initiatives and events. So again, same as phase 1, meeting community where they already are. We know that there's a lot of activities that happen in the spring. It tends to be busy for community engagement. We have things like the Breathe Bike Rodeo. It's May is Bike Month. So we don't want to compete with those events. We also want to reduce community fatigue. So we want to show up and be a part of the community events instead of trying to host another thing that the community has to show up to. So really trying to capitalize on those kinds of things and make sure we can meet community where they already are. And this allows us to, again, really just be in community with community and try and meet them where they're already going to be. And we're going to continue to lean into our school communities, catching folks in that March to kind of early May time period. So hopefully catching the beginning portion of that May is Bike Month time frame. So if anything is happening in there for May is Bike Month, that would be great. In terms of activities, we really want to, as Tracy mentioned, lean into decision-making. So she mentioned some dotmocracy. We've used items like ranked choice voting. We have some other cool activities that we've used. We've used cards and done some human-centered design, like card sort style activities to really help capture what community consensus is around projects. And again, with the transparency on boards where kind of everyone can see what is being decided as a whole. So we want to do more activities like that. In addition to the events that we did in phase 1, we're also planning to do workshop style events in phase 2. So these are longer form style events where we're going to be spending more time with community. So instead of just the pop-ups, we're having a little bit more sustained engagement in phase 2. We'll have the opportunity to meet with folks over a longer period of time and present more on the project. So instead of just having folks kind of pop up by the booth, we'll have a little bit more time for that engagement. So we'd love to continue to hear from you all. A couple questions that I do have for you guys is, one about groups. We've kind of shared before some of the groups that we've engaged in that first phase and kind of where we have some gaps. So would love to hear from you all on any groups that we may be missing, and any events that may be coming up. But one more point I want to make is that, and Tracy made this point earlier, is that one of our key focuses is making sure that the feedback that we're gathering is to ensure that we're telling a cohesive story across all of the plans and all of the engagement efforts, so that we can have top tier priorities across all of these plans that are really rooted in what the community wants to see. And that's really important because we want to make sure that the community feels ownership over whatever it is that comes out of this project and this plan. So with that, I would love to hear from you all on any community groups that we might want to focus on, that kind of fit into the gaps, or really anyone that you think would be a good fit for engaging in phase 2. And then, what was the other one? Any events? It's been a long night.
I've got an idea, and it also feeds into a group. It's the Bright Project neighborhood areas. And I think that the Earth Day / Easter egg hunt, you might already be going.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's a really great opportunity to meet with that community. And just so you know, if you need more opportunities, Bright Park is bustling in the evening, just before sunset. It's
Okay.
just lots of people. So
Was it BB Can that you were, is that the group? The Bright Project?
Bright Broderick, yeah. That
Community
those-
Action Network, is that the one?
No, just the neighborhoods in general, people
Okay.
living in that part of town. They go to Bright Park and you'll find them.
Okay. Yeah, we had some good engagement with the BB Can Community Action Network in the STEP project, but they've been a little unresponsive, I think, this project. So we can circle back with some community residents. I think we had a few folks that were active in our community advisory groups in previous engagements. Thank you. Yeah, and Earth Day is on our list.
I'll just throw out there, I was in the first cohort for the Citizens Academy that they had, and I think there was 24 people in that. They've had a second one, getting ready for a third one, but at least the first two groups, hopefully some of them engaged in this, your survey when you sent it out, but maybe we could get the actual email addresses and send them a direct thing and say, hey, you're engaged citizen, what do you think about it? I mean, put the pressure on them and get a response. I mean, because it's a pretty diverse group, representing all parts of the city. And then maybe also, again, I don't know what your timing is. I know there's tight time frames on the classes when they do that, and they're coming up in March, April, May. But maybe you can engage them there. So, it'll be 20 some odd people who are, already trying to be engaged more than they have been in the past. So.
It'd be great to have at a workshop.
Do they go through like trainings for the city?
Jason's probably speak to it, but it's a Citizens Academy where different departments come in and kind of rest of the people, teach them how the city works. And we toured the wastewater department. You engage with the public services.
I think
police department,
Commissioner
fire
Cummings
department.
is giving like a great overview. That's essentially what it is. There's a series of department-led presentations, a few like field trips over the course of I think like 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, about 3 months and 7 or 8.
Yeah.
I think there's 7 actual classes and then a couple field trips to the fire department and the wastewater people. But it's a good group. They like to engage.
Yeah, it sounds like
it's just a matter of if they can squeeze it in, but
Thank you.
Okay. So I got a big long list of where to find the bicyclists in this town. I'll go through this. If we start going too long, I'm happy to reach out to you offline and kind of get more as they come up or as I hear about them.
Sure.
But big groups of bicyclists can be kind of a slippery group to get to hold still for a minute because one, they're usually busy and they're grabbing the little bit of time outside of their work day or family day. So you either have their meeting point or their finishing point, which usually are different places, but sometimes they loop around to the beginning again. And some of these are also seasonal. The biking race season, for example, really kicks off in the fall. But that's humongous turnout for both local West Sac bicyclists and Sacramento side, and also the whole surrounding area too. But I'll definitely check out the cyclocross race events, and that's through a number of organizers, Folsom Rodeo Cross, Cyclo Circus, I think is the name of it, and also Clipton for Life does, I think, a huge amount of race. I think there's about 25 cyclocross races in the Sacramento area between October and December. So those are gigantic turnouts, not only for cyclists, but their spectators as well. For instance, the Nutty Cross race at Roostaller Farm is pretty darn close, and that's a gigantic group of people. So, the ones that are more close to the West Sac area, probably you could be able to find them on the map where they're listed. I also would have to toot my own horn here is that for Saba, I lead a monthly social ride the last Sunday of every month. And I just did my year's plan, and I've got about 2, maybe 3 West Sac rides.
Here we go.
So I could get in touch with it to tell you where those are. They're going to be on the Saba calendar.
Okay.
Another group that I get a lot of discussion with, it's can be a little unfocused at time, but on Facebook, the West Sac discussion group. has a very large group of folks that have a lot of opinions and are, you're looking for engagement. They're hungry for
On
engagement.
Facebook?
Yeah, on
Okay.
Facebook. And there's even some offshoots of people who have fled that group to form another group, for various reasons. Next on the list would be check out In Velo Veritas, which is a bike
That's
store.
the one that's on our radar. That
Yeah,
one's on
yeah.
our radar,
So there's a number of bike stores and retailers and bike painter groups around that really serve as gigantic hubs for these kind of regular rides that bring out a ton of people. There's specifically two, probably one very consistent weekly ride in West Sac that
Okay.
starts called the Shred Dog Ride, that starts at En Velo Veritas. It goes all down the Deepwater Shipping Channel. It's a 30-mile ride through West Sacramento, and it happens every single Thursday throughout, short of a couple winter months.
Awesome.
So that would probably be the number one group of bike cyclists that are, both local and
Great.
deeply passionate about West Sacramento and infrastructure. Sorry, I'm about halfway through. The West Sac Repair Cafe, it's in a space of a little bit of kind of lower attendance right now, but it does have a lot of awareness that's kind of building and building. That's the last Saturday of every month at the Holy Cross Church in Bright. It's a kind of small grassroots group there. But I would also say check out the events that Bike Dog on Industrial Boulevard does, because that's another place that really intersects with the racing crew, the Shred Dog people. And I think the year-end awards ceremony for the cyclocross races is held at Bike Dog West Sac,
Pearson,
usually.
do you have a contact at the West Sac Repair Cafe?
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a handful.
That'd be great. And I
Okay.
think we know Rafe, so we can get Bike Dog.
Yeah. And then, I've worked a lot with CalSTRS, and they have a group called Bikesters there. I mean, that's a huge center of employment in West Sac, and there's a very kind of robust employees cycling group and club there. And the last one I have on here is if you just hang out at Target, and after school lets out, you're going to get every kid that is riding their bike to school regularly, or, that think about riding their bikes. I mean, that's the closest thing to our open air mall that I've seen in West Sac is, if you just set up a tent outside of Target, there's a bunch of kids that are looking for stuff to do.
Cool. Great. Thank
Yep.
you.
I had one more to offer up. If you're looking for more youth involvement, you said you've talked to some folks out of the high school, but I'm a member of Rotary, and we support an Interact Club out there, and there's about 135 kids that are very actively involved in their community and do service projects. Probably put you in contact with somebody that could bring them together, maybe in the gymnasium or something,
Yeah.
and you could do a thing like that if that would
That'd be
interesting.
great.
Some contact, and I'll reach out to them.
And then one more contact, kind of the really huge hub of these regular rides and groups is called Squid Bikes. Squid like the sea creature. They're actually based in Tahoe Park in Sacramento, but they're a huge sponsor and sort of social media amplifier of many community rides. If you got in touch with them, they could kind of say like, hey, we're having these, here's our calendar, come out to this event or this event. They're also a big group that kind of helps sponsor really big weekly trail rides in the Honda Hills near the South River Road and the Locks area.
Awesome. Well, it sounds
And-
like we got bikes covered. Do y'all know anyone who rides a horse?
They own horses, but
I knew
I'll
more
talk
in
to them
Oakland.
tomorrow.
I do know a horse rider, but she doesn't live in West Sacramento, but I could ask.
Okay. All right. Well, any other thoughts before I hand it back to Tracy?
Done. have this slide for additional Q&A, but I really appreciate how interactive this presentation's been throughout. So we're here to take additional questions, and we're also available through Stephen for continued follow-up. Excited to be here with you. Look forward to back. Continue to get your input.
I just want to say thank you for coming. It's been a very interesting presentation, and I actually have learned a lot from you, and I appreciate the innovative approaches that you've both taken, or your organizations have taken, in terms of the data and the cell phone data and meeting people where they're at. I think that's really, really great. I think it's very effective, and I've also had to reframe my definition of a trip within the city in the last 2.5 hours. So I'm gonna sit with that for a minute. But yeah, no, very interesting. I think I really appreciated and enjoyed this presentation.
Thank you.
I'd just like to say thank you again, too. But I'd like to actually focus on your actual ERC document. So I thought it was an excellent document. And, just when you read it, it lays out how many plans, and this speaks to what the city here does. I think they do an excellent job of planning. They've got so many plans, and they're interrelated, and they try to leverage them, and, and then they tie in the regional plans and all that. And then I tried to engage some of my neighbors by putting it out on a couple of social medias, and asked my property manager to send it out to the 600 homes. And hopefully you guys will get some response. Nobody showed up here, so, tried to. But I did get one response on social media, and I wanted to share this with you because I thought it was important. They said, "Wow, this is great. Thank you for sharing that. There is a lot of good information in that packet. The maps alone are very eye-opening for me as a new California resident." So they're fresh to the city. They're looking at all those maps and things, and it was kind of like an educational, here's where you live. And those two things, the fact that, I really dig the planning that we do, and that this reflects that. And her response, I emailed the city manager and the council and said, we do such a great job of planning here. They really need to come up with like a one landing page that all the city's different plans and things are, because they're out there, but you got to know what department, and you got to know the name of it, to find it. There's so many good documents out there. I mean, it's an inventory of artwork. I don't know if I was aware of that. I mean, it's really cool. It shows you where all the different artwork. So if you had one landing page, that people could go to, I mean, it'd be a great way to sell the city, whether economic development or just real estate agents. I mean, you know what I mean? Anyway, great job on the document. Got good response to it.
Well, and I say, it's really important that the city does integrated, and that they value community engagement so much. We've worked, but when, again, going back to like funding sources, like health, they want to see, you need projects that you're asking funding were identified. That project that, and it's been hope staff that they're up project have them in a positive fight. Some of that we're all in on. Thank you for all that. Engage community members. Educate
Yeah, thank you for all your work. I did notice in kind of the data and things we were reviewing and things like that, it did seem to be a little siloed within the West Sac city limits. I know that there's questions of, scope and borders of where funding can be spent and everything. But if you're just looking for engagement, I would recommend to kind of really keep in mind how truly connected the Sacramento and West Sac and even Davis communities are. And that, maybe if we're looking at, there's employment centers in Sacramento that are like a lot of West Sac residents work at, it could be just right over the way, but you may overlook that, particular node of feedback where you could get everybody together in one place. Or, if there's, areas of recreation that, say, trying to get the bicyclists in, and a lot of the bicyclists go, and there's another bike dog location on Broadway, and I know that that's a big kind of gathering watering hole for a lot of West Sac residents, and then they just come right back. So, really kind of try to make those connections of where people are going to. I mean, if you'll catch a lot of West Sac residents in Davis, that commute over the Causeway every day, and would be more than happy to talk to you. And because, boy, it's really difficult to separate West Sac from the surrounding communities because it is such a short little jaunt just right over the way.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up because a lot of the initial cycling groups you brought up, like Clipped In for Life or the Folsom Rodeo Cross, like those were groups that I had identified, but I was like, I saw they had events in West Sac, but I wasn't really sure if they were familiar with the lay of the land, and we really want to make sure that we're engaging folks who know West Sacramento trails and who understand the network. And so we kind of tabled those groups because we're like, we want to make sure we're talking to folks who are residents or who understand the network, who use the trails. And so it's good to hear that those are good people to circle back with.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned CalSTRS, so that employment.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, absolutely. And it's just from the word on the street, it's West Sacramento it's almost one of the most premier cycling destinations for the entire Sacramento area. Like and that may not get around into, if you're not, plugged into the speech of certain people that are using it. But I will tell you that West Sacramento is the jewel of so many cyclists' eyes who live in Sac, live in Davis, live in Folsom, all that. They travel in to West Sac to ride.
so why, what are they attracted? What is?
It's gravel trails. Gravel and off-road cycling is one of the hottest recreational activities in the whole country, in the whole world right now. And it doesn't get a whole lot of press because it's very not visible. It's in places that it happens in places that you can't see from cars by design, honestly, because that's the escape from the car world. So along the Deepwater Shipping Channel and through places like the Honda Hills and the bike trail on the northern reach of Bright, there's just amazing premier open space, and it does come to sort of the more open space and more wildernessy places of West Sac that unfortunately someday will probably be developed, and you'll be talking to suburb people instead of recreational users. But it's something why I try to push for the preservation of the open and wilderness spaces in West Sac so much, because it is so much of our draw as a city. And anyone riding through West Sacramento stays and spends some money. So.
It brings up one of the data sources that we have in Strava.
Ooh, good idea. Like I said, every week, hundreds and thousands of miles are put down on West Sac's avenues and boulevard, and they use the paved streets to make those connections too, because all of the dirt trails don't necessarily meet up with each other. But for instance, the Thursday Shred Dog ride, does the gravel on the Deepwater Shipping Channel all the way down, crosses over past Dave's Produce, and then gets right onto the South River Road and does all the way back. And there's connections there to be made, and all those bicyclists would definitely appreciate fast 1 or 4 connections to those places. But it's absolutely huge, and it's so often, I think it's largely invisible.
Yeah.
Those heat maps are utterly fascinating.
Yeah.
To show wow, there's a trail that goes through this, just green block on the map, but hundreds of people use it. It's the darkest line you see. And it's oh, that's the secret route. That's the one that all the locals know.
Will those Strava maps be published or, put in a report?
They're public info. If you
Okay.
you can
Cool to
access
see.
the Strava heat map without an account.
Oh.
It's fascinating. I use it in classes all the time.
Nice. Okay.
And Strava, several years ago, they give you the I don't know.
Well, Strava users are obsessive about recording. It's one of the most obsessive groups I've ever seen in my life.
I know.
Another program to look into is Ride with GPS. They're also a very popular mapping and routing group that also has its own heat map data, which would be very, very useful.
Well, with that, ready for, let us know if you need questions, our email address.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
I think that concludes that segment of the meeting tonight. We're going to move on to the general administration function part 2. The director's report. Do we have anything under that?
I just wanted to provide an update. Back in July of 2025, city staff came to the TMI Commission with the TDA claim and the VIA on-demand rideshare workshop. After during that meeting, the TMI Commission supported staff's recommendation generally on the fair kind of recommendation on increasing the VIA pass pricing. We brought that item to council in August of 2025, and based on city council direction, it was to come back at a different time with some more information. So there hasn't been an increase on the VIA pass pricing. We did make changes to the downtown Sacramento pilot area as we had reported to the TMI Commission. And that's all the updates for now on VIA.
Thank you. Appreciate that. The commission calendar, I believe our next meeting is Monday, March 2nd. Is that correct? Not sure. I think it's every other month, Jason's saying yes. And I think that's all we have. Next, we need a motion to adjourn. Make a motion to adjourn. A second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
All right.